Greetings, friends, fellow citizens, fellow patriots, and even non-citizens, and welcome to this week's edition of the We the People Convention Weekly News and Opinion Podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski. I'm the host of this podcast. I'm also the president of the We the People Convention organization. And this podcast and our wonderful website and our social media and our text messages and emails and our donations to other conservative groups and causes are all paid for by the generous donations of the donors to the We the People Convention. And if you have the means to help support our organization in our fight to protect and defend your and my individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, please go to wethepeopleconvention.org and click on the donate link and help support our efforts. We greatly appreciate it. I hope that you've been enjoying your summer. It's hard to believe we're already into August. Football season is knocking on the door. We had the Hall of Fame, game here in Canton nearby just this week. And, it's just time goes marching on, doesn't it? And, with that is the election that is heading, straight our way. That is really critical to the future of our nation. And so we're going to be talking about why that's so critical and what your and my responsibility is for this election in our effort to protect and defend our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. And so I'm going to start with what happened last night and just ended at 5 o'clock this morning. And that was what the Senate did last night. And let me play this clip from Mike Lee as he recaps it for you.
Okay, so it's about 5 a.m. and we just wrapped up in the Senate. Long night of voting. We got Todd Blanche confirmed as the Attorney General. That's a good thing. We got the government funded through December 11th, and that's a good thing along the lines of the White House priorities. And tragically, the Save America vote on the voter ID component failed. Not a single Democrat joined us. We're going to have to keep fighting on that one. But we're not done. We're just getting started. We had the voice vote on a journey, and it failed. They outvoted us. That was the first time, as far as I'm aware, in decades when any vote has been held on a significant recess or adjournment. And I hope to have more of those in the future. I don't know what else to say other than thanks to all those who encouraged us to keep going, to keep fighting. We did our best. Left no stone unturned. I wish the outcome had been different, both as to adjournment and as to these votes. But this fight's not over. We're just getting started.
So, while the fight is not over, it can never be over until we win. Getting started, no. I mean, the bottom line is what they did last night was to make sure that having to prove you're a citizen to register to vote and having to have a voter ID to vote this November will not be passed into law. They're going on a 5-week recess to basically go home and campaign. Boy, I'd like to show up at some of those campaign events and say, yeah, what are you campaigning on? Because, ladies and gentlemen, the documentation I'm going to give you as we go into this podcast basically suggests that this is treason. They know, the Republican senators, particularly the Democrats, know that they're cheating massively in our elections, and their actions are allowing that. And what that does, it is intended to overthrow our form of government, to overthrow our country. So the Senate, the U.S. Senate, which has a slim Republican majority, did not end the filibuster, did not go to 50 votes to pass it, did not bring in J.D. Vance to say, no, you can't cheat in our elections more. No, 30, 40, 50 million illegals cannot vote in our elections. They didn't do that. And they didn't do that on purpose, and they did it knowingly. So I'm going to build the case for you that this is, in fact, treason, and it needs to be taken very seriously. So let me play this clip from Stephen Miller, and here's what he has to say about what we're facing as a nation at this very moment.
We spent decades fighting a Cold War with the Soviet Union. Now, I choose my words carefully, but I'm going to say this tonight. Sean, that Cold War has come home. It's here in America. This is the biggest, greatest, most existential struggle this country will ever face, Sean. Because if communists get control of House seats, then Senate seats, and governor's mansions, the American dream that for 250 years our heroes bled and died for is gone. And it won't come back because they will never let you get it back. President Trump is the only thing right now standing between the American people and that abyss.
Yeah, because the U.S. Senate is allowing this to happen. Because how do they win House seats? How do they win Senate seats? By cheating. And the U.S. Senate could have stopped them from cheating and chose not to. Chose not to. Do you understand? And so, here's the receipts. We always bring the receipts. I sent this article out to you via text and email, all right? And if you're not getting our texts and emails, go to wethepeopleconvention.org, right on the front page, and sign up, because this is serious stuff. And you got to be informed. You got to know what's threatening your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. So I put this article out from Front Page Magazine. In just 20 years, the Muslim Brotherhood has shown that its plan will destroy America. That's not hyperbole. That's fact, okay? So I'll read from some of the article. You can read the whole article on our website. Barring some wholly unforeseen developments, such as a Republicans actually mounting an effective challenge somewhere, the 120th Congress will convene on January 3rd of 2027 with a record 7 Muslim members, 6 representatives, and for the first time in American history, 1 senator. I dispute that, but this is what their case are making. And for the Muslim Brotherhood Link organization in the United States, the future looks bright. Before 2027, there were no Muslims in the House of Representatives or Senate at all, with 7 Muslim legislators who will be sworn in on the Quran, no doubt, not the Bible, right, which I think should be illegal. In January, will include 4 representatives in the 119th Congress: Ilhan Omar, Rashid Tlaib, Andre Carson, Latifah Simmons. Joining them will be the nation's first Muslim senator, Abdul El-Sayed from Michigan. I don't think that's going to happen, as well as Reps Darla Avila Chevalier from New York and Adam Hamway from New Jersey. After the November elections, there could be more as well. But El-Sayed, Avila, and Hamway are virtually assured of election now. I'll prove to you that that's not true, as they have nothing to worry about in November. The left, once in power, generally moves to make opposition to its policies progressively, more difficult. In New York, New Jersey, and Michigan, the left has been in power for a long time, and the Republican Party is moribund. I think that's too pessimistic. We'll talk about that, okay? But you're getting his point. So I want to explain what this really means. So the number has gone from 0 to 4 to 7, and many more to come. Every election cycle, we see more Muslim candidates, not fewer, crowed Robert McCaw, the executive director of CARE Action, the explicitly political arm of the Hamas-linked Council of American Islamic Relations. Hamas-linked CARE top dog Nahad Awad articulated that efforts on August 31st, 2024, at a convention of the likewise Hamas-linked Islamic Society of North America. Lawmaking, he stated, has equal parts obviousness and ominousness. It's about making laws. And that's why the Muslims in the U.S. are seeking political power, because they want to bring Sharia law to the United States. Okay, it was not just religious, but political, supremacist, expansionist, and violent to the United States. Awad continued Today we have 43 state delegates in the United States who are Muslim. If they want to run for Congress in the next 2 or 4 or 6 years, they can. We may end up, if we are organized, we may end up with about 50 members of Congress in the next 6 years. Next 6 years, if only we plan and put our money where our mouths are and our minds are. The Muslim Brotherhood articulated the ultimate goal in a captured internet document dating from May 1991 called an explanatory memorandum on the general strategic goal for the Brotherhood in North America. It stated, the process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process with all the words means. The Brotherhood must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers so that it is eliminated and God's religion is made victorious over all other religions. Do you understand? This is not an accident. This is a plan. And look how well it's working. Democrats are happily electing more and more Muslims to Congress and congratulating themselves on their commitment to diversity, don't you know? Leftists dismiss and deride anyone who brings up Islam's political and supremacist aspect as Islamophobia. You're a racist. Everything is going according to plan, and those who dare even to point out that there is a plan are thus marginalized and ignored. Okay? So that's a pretty harsh look at things. I contend that, yes, they're making real progress despite our efforts, all right? But you got to understand, this is serious. This is real, and it's connected, okay? That's why what the Senate did last night and this morning is treasonous, because there's no doubt that we are under attack, as Stephen Miller said, the greatest assault on our nation since the Cold War. And you want more proof? Here's a video from Ted Cruz that makes it clear as a bell. Just happened. This is a hearing they just held.
Does the Muslim Brotherhood also partner with political groups such as the Democratic Socialists of America?
Yes, sir, they do.
Would you agree that this alliance between the Muslim Brotherhood and the DSA, otherwise known as the Red-Green Alliance, is based on a shared hatred of America, Israel, Western civilization writ large, capitalism, and democracy?
Yes, sir, I would. And I would go further as to say it's also united around a revolutionary objective advocating for the overthrow of the U.S. Constitution.
So how much clearer do you want it to be? The Democrat Socialist / Communists of America's own platform, which they are not denying. They're going on every news outlet you can name, including conservative news outlets, and saying, we want to eliminate the presidency, the Senate, the Electoral College. We want free college for everyone, free healthcare for everyone, free everything for everyone. We want to destroy America. It's straight up. They're not hiding it. So why would the Senate, the U.S. Senate, not pass the SAVE Act to prevent them from gaining enough power to destroy our country, unless you're a traitor? And I mean that. I'm not throwing that word around lightly. That's treason. You swear an oath as a U.S. senator, as a U.S. congressman, as any government official to do what? To protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And yet you just left town and voted not to protect the Constitution of the United States, to give the people who want to overthrow the United States the power they need to cheat in our elections to destroy our country. How's that not treason? Write to me, info@wethepeopleconvention.org, and argue that point with me. How's that not treason? And why don't you bring that up with your senator when they're home for 5 weeks campaigning at big fundraisers, right? With all the rich people in your state. Yeah, you need to talk to some of the damn rich people in your state and say, what the hell are you supporting? The overthrow of our country? Really? Really? Yeah, really, they are. So then I put this story up because there's a I think there's a disconnect. I think there's a disconnect between the words that they want to overthrow the country and how they will actually do it. So I'm sending these things to you to share with people, to educate them about the how, because they're not fooling around. This is what they will do to America if you allow any Democrat to be in power. They want to abolish rent by any means necessary. I put this article out to you because it's chilling, but it's real. You've got to read it and share it at wethepeopleconvention.org. And there's little share icons on all of our web pages where you can click and get a link to the story, and you can text that or email it to anyone you want. You've got to do that work. We must inform our fellow citizens of this real threat. The Democrat Socialist Communists are not just spewing slogans. In New York, they are executing the plan that they want to impose on all of America. Well, what is that? What is communism? They want to take your property. The state owns everything. So what are they doing? In New York City, Mayor Zoran Mandami, the commie, is clear about the number one enemy of his administration, landlords. Whether it's his legally dubious rent freeze, his attempts to seize buildings through legal wranglings, his office's mass engagements plan to send volunteers, don't you know, to support tenant organizing efforts, or his appointment of DSA member and radical activist Sia Weaver as a tenant advocate, the mayor has made anti-rent policies central to his agenda. For those familiar with nationwide radical tenant efforts, that agenda is alarmingly familiar. The movement, which has sprung up in big cities across the country, frames eviction as a form of violence. Yeah, you don't pay your rent, but if I throw you out, you're connecting an act of violence against me. It's total hokum, okay? Paying rent as something done as a threat at the barrel of a gun, and property owners as monolithically exploitive class. It's also adopting increasingly confrontational tactics such as rent strikes, nuisance litigation, and social pressure campaigns that threaten to turn ideology into potential violent action. Not potential. They're going to get violent, right? He just printed the names of hundreds of thousands of New York City wealthy people and where they live. Why did he do that? They want the Mangione effect, man. They want to kill people. To at least one of this movement's most prominent leaders has been photographed in New York's mayor, and is close with Weaver raises questions about its influence on Mandami's administration. In any case, the radical tenant activists pose a real threat to landlords' safety and sanity. Okay, so listen to this. The best way to understand the tenant organizing movement is through its most influential manifesto, Abolish Rent, How Tenants Can End the Housing Crisis. There's a link in this story that you can read this manifesto by Tracy Rosenthal and Leonardo Vilchins. The authors argue that tenants should become the architects of a long-term project of expropriation through which that hoarded wealth becomes shared by us all by means of militant organizing, strategic litigation, and coordinated pressure campaigns. The book has gained widespread attention in activist circles, appearing on Democratic Socialists of America's recommended list and serving as the focus of DSA's nationwide Abolish Rent reading group. Rosenthal Vilchins pioneered an escalatory tactic described in Abolish Rent with the Los Angeles Tenants Union, which they co-founded. In their scheme, tenants started by pressing demands on landlords. If those demands are refused, organizers increase pressures through rent strikes and protests, which can last months or years. They also encourage pushing repair and deduct laws beyond their traditional use as a narrow legal remedy for documenting housing disrepair and landlord inaction. Rosenthal reframes those laws not simply as a way for individual tenants to seek repairs, but as a means for tenants to redirect rent money and ask, what if we control the rent ourselves? She celebrates this practice as the first step towards collective control of rent. Now get this, last thing, the most effective arrow in a tennis organization quiver may be directly targeting landlords with disruptive tactics. Those include camping out on the laws of property owners, leaving negative reviews on their other businesses, or even disrupting private gatherings. For example, Rosenthal and her allies sought to punish a landlord by crashing his daughter's wedding, turning a once-in-a-lifetime family celebration into a site of political confrontation and social sanction. Rosenthal later described the action as really fun. Really fun. Yeah, and what happens to your apartment when you drive these evil, wealthy people who've risked their capital to buy the building, maintain the building, run the building, keep it safe? What happens when the collective, the renters, control the rent and the building? Yeah, you can go look at Soviet Union for examples of that, where everybody lived in squalor for decades under the Soviet Union. But no, don't misbelieve me, and don't just take that article and share it with people. Share this video as well. This black veteran has a great take on this. Listen to this.
This is not Iraq, Egypt, Syria, or Saudi Arabia. This is America. An unholy alliance is happening right now across America between violent Islam and godless socialism. And what they have in common is they both hate freedom, liberty, and self-governance. This past weekend, tens of thousands of Muslims flooded the streets in Michigan waving black flags, Arabic chants, and Hezbollah-linked imagery. The city has a new majority, and Christians and Jews are second-class citizens in their own city, and they are left unprotected, and complaints go ignored. And have y'all noticed yet? America is more and more comfortable electing Muslims to office. You see, guys, this is their playbook. A Muslim imam said, "We will establish Sharia law through the electoral process. Commissioners, senators, congressmen, every political office." Do you know the fastest growing language in the United States is Arabic? Do you know American retailers in Michigan stores are labeling their stores in Arabic? Do you know that the most popular name in Canada and UK is Muhammad? Very soon, the most popular name in America is Abdul. If you know, you know. And meanwhile, the media and the Democrats have y'all distracted with Trump hatred when President Trump is the only one trying to save y'all from your own destruction. Muslims don't share American values and beliefs. They don't care about our Constitution. And y'all would be surprised. All I hear is from Christians is that I, as a pastor, need to stay out of politics. Well, why don't you tell that to Muslims? Because they want to get involved in politics. Christians are saying, I don't want to force Christianity down anybody's throat. I don't want to force it on my kids. Well, Muslims say, they don't have a problem forcing Sharia law on you. Muslims are more proud of their pedo prophet than Christians are proud of Jesus Christ. That's shameful. And I tell you something, the Democratic Party, like Hakeem Jeffries, Bernie Sanders, AOC, Warren, Obama. Matter of fact, all this began with Obama. In 2009, Barack Obama said, the U.S. has been enriched by Muslims who have been a part of America since our founding. What? Islam is a weapon of mass destruction, and Democrats are a means for people to enter our country and then our government and destroy the foundation of our republic and our way of life. And if parents and young people, and especially pastors and preachers and churches and spiritual leaders don't wake up, your city and your churches will eventually be overrun.
Is that clear enough? Is he lying? Or is he making sense? And so what are you doing about it? How much are you talking about this? How much are you sharing this with others? We're giving you the resources. It's up to us to defend our country. Now, he said Donald Trump's, standing in the way. Stephen Miller said Donald Trump's the only thing standing in the way. But it can't just be Donald Trump. It has to be us. It has to be we the people, right? This is serious stuff. But what I don't get, which causes me concern, is things like he showed that march in Dearborn. I think there were 43,000 Muslims marching through the street, blocking the street, and basically chanting death to America, okay? And how did we let that happen? Why wasn't there 1,000 ICE agents in armored vehicles right there where they were going to march? And let's see how many of them marched. How many of them are legal residents of the United States? How many of them are registered to vote? Why are we allowing that? This is the thing that is a disconnect for me. Because either we're fighting this war or we're not fighting this war. Stephen Miller saying, we got to fight this war, but Congress just recessed and said, yeah, it's okay if those people vote. Are we fighting the war or aren't we? Some of us are. And it's not as bad, as they want to make it out to be. All right. Because the whole thing now, the corporate media, including Fox News and the Republicans are, the Democrat communist socials are take over America and you got to fight them and all that stuff. And yeah, they're eating up the Democratic Party. And the Democrats like Fetterman are saying, you're going to destroy the Democratic Party. And you know what we're saying? Great. Awesome. Our goal, your goal, the goal of our organization for this year is to make the Democratic Party go the way of the Whigs. They are giving us that opportunity to destroy them, literally wipe them off the map, make them win nothing. But we got to get the message out that they are as that last gentleman said, they're the conduit for what the Muslim Brotherhood is doing. They're the entryway. They held the door open for the illegals to come in to destroy our nation. That's the message you got to be sharing, okay? But that front page article, a front page magazine article, was talking about El Said in Michigan, who won this Michigan Senate primary, for the Democrats. And everybody's acting like, now this is a sure thing. Yeah, it's not a sure thing. Listen to this research by CNN, okay?
Sayed became the favorite for that nomination, and now that he's actually become the nominee, Democratic chances have fallen dramatically. You can see it right here. Cast your prediction odds. Take a look here. Chance to win the Michigan Senate race. You go back to April at this point in the month. Dems had a 79% chance. Look how that number has fallen dramatically. Down we go into Lake Michigan. Now we're talking about just a 59% chance, while Mike Rogers, the Republican nominee, look at this, 21% chance, basically doubling, now up to a 41% chance. So the people who are putting their money where their mouths are quite skeptical at this point, or at least significantly more skeptical, that Democrats will be able to hold on to the Michigan Senate seat with El Sayed as the nominee, though I still should note he is the slight favorite here. But given Michigan being a purple state and given where Trump's approval rating is, I think it's quite surprising that his numbers are not significantly higher.
Let's talk about where things broke down and what that means for the future. El Sayed talks about, being the candidate for the working family, the working class. How did they vote for him?
Yeah, this I think is the big problem, right? Democrats have been hemorrhaging working class voters, voters without a college education. El Sayed comes in, the great promise of him, some populist message. I can connect with those voters. Well, in the primary, it didn't happen. Take a look here. Okay, counties El Sayed won in the primary. 0 of 15. 0 of 15 with the lowest share of college degrees. Ergo, he did not win in those working class areas. Where he did win, he won 13 of the 15 counties with the highest share of college degrees. So you're thinking about Democrats having real trouble amongst the working class. El Sayed came dramatically from those areas. In fact, not where there is working class folks, but where there are highly educated folks, more from elite circles than from the working class circles. And I think there's real worries among Democrats. Will that transfer over to the general election and El Sayed continue to have the problems that prior Democrats have had with the working class?
Yeah. Okay. So he was not, getting a popular vote. And it's not clear that he's going to easily defeat Mike Rogers. I think Rogers can win. Okay. We'll see what happens. Again, Republicans are great at screwing it up. So we'll see, if he can take on this guy and frame him as what he is. He's a red-green axis Muslim communist whose goal is to destroy the United States. And it was really good too, because, we're in political season, folks. So all the crazy crap starts to happen, right? So this primary just ends and El Sayed is caught on camera talking about how much he hates Mackinac Island. Now, I don't know if you guys around the country are familiar or globally with Mackinac Island, but this is this island in northern Michigan that there's no cars on it. You have to, ride horse-drawn carriages and stuff, but it's a beautiful place. And everyone in Michigan loves it. And this clown is on camera saying he hates it. You know why? Because it represents white American supremacy, right? That's why he hates it. So that kind of stuff's going to help. So I think we can win this. And then the second part of it was that it's political season, and the polling miss in Michigan reveals a huge problem. Well, what happened? Before the election, they were saying that Al-Said was going to win by a huge margin, okay? Emerson had Said winning whites 62 to 32%, plus 30%. It appears he won them a lot closer to 5%. 5%. And it wasn't just one poll, every single poll had him winning by, 19, 17, 14, 16%. Why? Because they're polling. This article goes on to say that he got college educated, and not even college indoctrinated people, but people with post-bachelor's degrees. People who are quote unquote professionals who can't find a frickin' job because their degree is worthless. He got like 70% of their vote. But you can't win on that. Okay? So it's not clear. The history's not written. We can make a difference. We have members in all 50 states. Our members in Michigan, you gotta fight. This is where we defend the union. We need to take that seat with a Republican and push back on these damn demi-communists, okay? So let's get at it. But again, there's more to this picture than meets the eye. And I've been telling you all along that cash is king, and Washington Republicans bankroll midterms as National Democrats coffers are in the red. So money, as you and I know, is huge in our elections now, and that's not good, but it's a fact, right? So what's going on? On the heels of President Donald Trump's Tuesday fundraiser in Los Angeles, and with the November midterms less than 100 days away, Washington Republicans hold a commanding financial edge over Washington Democrats that could prove decisive in key races for control of Congress. The Republican National Committee reported more than $128 million in cash on hand at the end of June with no debt, while the Democratic National Committee had about $60 million in cash and roughly $18.5 million in debt, and they actually had to put their headquarters in Washington up as collateral to get that loan, okay? So we've got tons of money. The disparity extends to other National Party committees and alliance super PACs, giving Republicans more than double the cash of their Democratic counterparts overall, not counting additional resources from groups linked to Trump. Okay, the fundraiser in California was part of a 2-day Western swing for Trump, in which he headlined a closed press RNC fundraiser at his golf club at Rancho Palos Verdes, California, before traveling to Las Vegas, where he did a campaign stop. And as a side note, the Secret Service and FBI arrested a guy who was plotting to try to assassinate Trump at that golf outing. So that was just kind of, just blown off, but it continues. These are real threats, okay? Bottom line is, Trump has like $800 million that he can spend, and that's no small thing. The Democrat-aligned fundraising platform Act Blue recently reported it has raised $586 million for candidates in the second quarter of 2026, including $215 million raised in June. That figure included contributions from 573,000 first-time donors. That is highly suspect and being investigated because there's all kinds of evidence that's just not true. And Act Blue has been under investigation by Congress and by the FBI and the DOJ. How come no charges have been brought? How come with no charges? We're letting them raise money from foreign sources like they've always done? When are you going to stop it? After the election? Good questions, right? Historically, the party or candidate able to spend more on advertising and get out the vote efforts tends to prevail. Analysis of congressional races show the higher spending campaign wins 91% of the time. That's an interesting statistic, driven in part by the advantages of incumbency and the ability to saturate airwaves and mobilize voters. There are, of course, notable exceptions, especially in the Trump era. In 2016, Hillary Clinton and allies raised over $1.2 billion, roughly twice the $600 million Trump raised, yet he prevailed. More recently, Trump endorsed Ken Paxton defeated John Cornyn in the Texas Senate primary runoff, despite being outspent 10-1. Okay? The money does not guarantee victory in every contest. Presidential races have occasionally gone to lower spenders. The correlation remains strong, however, in House and Senate battles where television, digital ads, and field operations shape outcomes. Voters' top concerns heading into the election center on the economy and the cost of living. A Pew Research Center survey in July found 29% of registered voters most wanted congressional candidates to discuss economic issues, including affordability, far ahead of immigration and health care. Okay? All right. So we've got more money. They've got the Democrat, yoke around their neck that the Democrat communists, the DSA yoke around their neck. Okay? But then this is very disturbing. And I think many of you will find what they say in this CNN report true, because I've been hearing this for months. So this is very important.
What is going on, Mr. Berman? What's going on is simple. Is the MAGA movement was built among the working class, non-college Americans. And take a look at this trend line that we're looking at in the data. Here we go. Okay, net favorability rating, the MAGA movement, non-college adults. Back in October of 2024, look at that. On the plus side of the ledger, positive, plus 6 points. Down we go into the Atlantic Ocean now. Look at this movement. Now minus 22 points. That is a shift, Johnny B, of 28 points away from the MAGA movement, away with non-college Americans. So the bottom line is the group at which the Trump movement was built upon. They are shifting away and saying, we don't like MAGA anymore.
Same question, same poll here. This is really interesting to see these numbers move like that.
Yes, exactly right. It's the same question, same poll.
All right. So how about what the same group is saying about Donald Trump specifically?
Yeah, okay. So you know what? The idea being, okay, maybe they've soured on MAGA, but they haven't soured on MAGA, but maybe they haven't soured on me, Donald Trump might be saying. Ain't the truth. Take a look here. Okay, non-college voters on Trump. Hello. Okay, in the 2024 election, he won them by 13 points, right? That was the reason he won. He won among non-college voters, a very strong performance amongst them. And that, of course, was the reason he was able to win, because college voters were against him. But look at this now, minus 19 points. Minus 19 points. We're talking about an even bigger shift here. We're talking about, what is this? This is a 32-point shift away from the president of the United States when it comes to his key core political group. This is why he's in so much trouble. It's not just that college voters are against Trump now. It turns out that non-college voters, the ones that he built his presidential bid on, have waved adios, goodbye, see you later, Mr. Trump. We don't like you anymore.
Okay, so I have seen that. The Iran war is particularly unpopular, and for young, for non-college educated blue-collar workers, inflation is crushing them. And gas prices are a big part of that. That's linked to the Iran war. And Trump knows this, and he's going to have to do something about it. So you've got to talk to people. And I've said to all of you, and this is my position, and this is going to be a position of the We the People Convention organization going into this election. I'm not asking you to vote for Republicans. I'm asking you to vote in your own personal best interest. That's what you're going to vote for in November. When you talk to young people, you can say, I'm mad at President Trump for the war. I'm upset about gas prices, but you can send them the Stephen Miller video. You can send them the Ted Cruz video that'll be linked on our podcast page. You can send them the video from the black veteran who explained what the heck's going on. Our best interest is to destroy the Democrat Party, the tunnel that the commies and the Islamists are using to infiltrate our country, our culture, and our political system by voting for every Republican with a pulse and against every Democrat that runs at any level and wipe them off the map. That's what's in the best interest of the American people, regardless of what the Republicans have done and not done and all that. Because right now, what power do we have? The only real power we have is to show up in November and vote. And to not do that is stupid. Okay? So your message, I ask you to share with everyone you know. You're not voting for Republicans or Democrats. You're voting for yourself. You're voting in your own personal best interest, in the best interest of your family, of your community, of your country. And that is to vote for every Republican with a pulse, because the enemy we must vanquish, destroy, wipe out, not just defeat, are the commie Islamist red-green axis in the Democrat Party. Clear enough? Make sense? Okay, that's the message. You got to share it. If you got a better message, write to me at info@wethepeopleconvention.org and share it with me so I can share it with our audience. Okay? But Trump is still doing everything in his power. And despite our frustration, and boy, last week I showed some pretty strong frustration with Trump about the Biden pardons, didn't I? Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that in the second half of the podcast again. But he's fighting for us. And here's the proof. Trump signs order to curb birthright citizenship, target birth tourism. The new order came after the Supreme Court in June overturned a bid by Trump to restrict birthright citizenship on the grounds it violated the 14th Amendment. He didn't give up. President Donald Trump signed 2 executive orders on August 6 that will restrict automatic citizenship to children born in the United States because of commercial birth tourism and several other factors. One of the measures bans birth tourism, the practice of traveling to the United States on a tourist visa with the intention of having a child who is automatically given U.S. citizenship. Trump called it a big deal. And the U.S. And then Trump called, for a second thing in it. Let's see here. It includes, for instance, an order that expands the definition of people who are ineligible for birthright citizenship to include, for instance, alien enemies of the United States, members of foreign terrorist organizations, and large categories of people who lobby and act on behalf of foreign governments. The idea is some people come here, pretend to be tourists, pretend to be a visitor, say they want to go to Disneyland, but the real reason they are here is to have a child, make the child an automatic citizen, leave our country, and then have a U.S. child citizen. That's just wrong. And so people are saying this new rule, which is basically based on what the Supreme Court said, is going to be challenged in court again. And Trump wants that. That ruling by the Supreme Court, we all know, was wrong. Roberts and Barrett were wrong. And if we keep pushing, we're going to make it clear. The only way to become a citizen of the United States is to be born here legitimately of U.S. parents, or to apply for citizenship and go through that legal process. Not to break in, not to fly in on a plane, have a baby, and fly home. That's not citizenship. And so kudos to President Trump for doing that. The fraud fight continues. J.D. Vance had a press conference, and they've identified $230 billion in fraud since March. Again, this is how the Muslims and the commies are funding the overthrow of our government. That's why we got to stop the fraud. Vice President J.D. Vance said on August 5th that the Trump administration has identified $230 billion in fraud and prevented $56 billion in fraudulent payments since the president's fraud task force was established in March. So they pulled back some of it, but a lot of it's getting spent. Vance discussed the task force initiatives at a roundtable in the Eisenhower Executive Office building attended by more than a dozen Republican lawmakers. We have been able to identify this, but we urge Congress to codify certain anti-fraud actions taken by the administration to ensure that they remain in effect for future administrations. We don't want the next administration to undo all the incredible work that we've been doing. But he's not saying the thing that I've been saying to you and I've been asking you to say to your congressman. What is that? This fraud needs to be cut from the budget because it's not keeping any American who needs help from getting help. It's absolutely not. And so if they don't cut it from the budget, what's going to happen to it? It's just going to keep being siphoned off for illegal means. And J.D. Vance is failing on that count. And if you have a chance to see him or talk with him, make that point to him and say, hey, JD, cut the crap. Quit saying that, this fraud is keeping young American children from getting food and young mothers from getting health care. Shut up. That's a lie. You're helping our enemies. Stop it. Okay? Now, then this article comes out, and again, this is how the left works. And this is why you watch this podcast, and this is why you need to talk to people intelligently about the truth. Report, mass deportations cost $2,358 per taxpayer. Oh my, we should stop mass deporting people. It's too expensive, don't you know? American taxpayers would pay $2,358 each to fund President Donald Trump's mass deportation effort, according to a new calculator released by the Economic Policy Institute. The Trump administration rejects the claim, however, instead saying the real cost to taxpayers come from illegal immigration. The left-leaning EPI analysis, highlighted by Axios, another leftist rag, estimated the federal government will spend roughly $268 billion on deportation efforts during Trump's second term through funding provided by the One Big Beautiful Bill. The group argued that money, get this, could instead be directed towards programs such as food assistance, Medicaid, or public housing, all of which have been exposed by the article just did with you by J.D. Vance as sources of fraud. Right? Hundreds of people have been charged, are going to prison. And they said, oh, no, don't spend the $268 billion to deport these people. Give that money to them. Right? How dumb do they think we are? Very dumb, because people, publications printed this article as if it was the gospel truth. You know what the gospel truth is? We can deport these people at a cost of $2,358 each when it costs us $30,000 to $50,000 to pay for them to live here. Housing subsidies, food subsidies, education subsidies, medical subsidies. Oh no, the Economic Policy Institute doesn't understand that if you could spend $2,358 to save $30,000, that would be smart. Yeah, they're just lying to you. And then on top of that, the DHS spokesman told Axios the administration's self-deportation program actually saves taxpayers money by offering illegal aliens a free flight and a $2,600 stipend to voluntarily leave the country. According to DHS, the program costs about $5,100 per person, more or less $13,000 less than traditional deportation. Okay? The lies, you have to expose them. You have to make it clear. It's not costing us money to deport these people. It's saving us billions of dollars. And oh yeah, by the way, it's making rents cheap. No one wants to talk about that. J.D. Vance, those guys talked about wherever ICE goes, wherever ICE has been and rounded up people like they're doing in Springfield, Ohio right now with the Haitians, but you're not hearing that news coverage, are you? Because they don't want you to know they're actually doing it. Rents go down because if you bring 20 million people into your country who take up housing, if you, a working class American, want to rent, it's going to cost you more. Supply and demand. Capitalism. Yeah. Another side benefit that they don't tell you about. And so this story is interesting. Outrage over non-citizens allegedly voting election ignites probe into Garden State Dems. Okay, so the Senate just left and didn't pass the SAVE Act to prevent illegals from voting. The House, which has passed the SAVE Act, I think 5 times, right? 5 times maybe, right? They're now looking into New Jersey. Senator Cory Booker, Democrat of New Jersey, is arguing that passing the SAVE Act would not have stopped the 6,600 non-citizens in New Jersey from casting votes, calling for proper prosecutions to be done at the state level. House Republicans are probing New Jersey's government after Governor Mikey Sherrill admitted that more than 6,000 non-citizens were added to their voter rolls. The GOP has been hammering at New Jersey Democrats ever since Sherrill's announcement, and are basically demanding that they cooperate in exposing how this happened. But again, it's Republicans that are stopping this from being fixed. So, Jordan and those guys can make a thing, but it's all theater, isn't it? It's all theater. And we're not excited about that. Just all words, all words. All right. So I think you can see, we've made, the case that we have to stop the cheating. We have to vote no matter what our problems are with the Republicans in November in our own personal best self-interest. And we have a historic opportunity to destroy the Communist Democrat Party once and for all. And this information I've just shared with you, you need to share with others. Okay? So before we get to this end of the first half of the show, I want to delve into one more thing, and that's this climate issue. All right? The arson suspect in Spokane, has confessed to setting dozens of fires, the records show. All right? So remember, when the fires in California started, Gavin Newsom said, oh, it was global warming. When the fires in Canada started and we were all breathing smoke for a week here in the United States, Carney said, oh, it's global warming. Except in California, they arrested people for setting the fires. And now we had these fires in Washington State. A 37-year-old Spokane man is facing formal arson charges after allegedly confessing to starting dozens of wildfires across Spokane County over a year-long period, culminating in a massive 3,200-acre blaze that has destroyed hundreds of structures so far. According to court records, Aaron Farinacci, Farinacci, was arrested and charged following an investigation into the fast-moving Old Trail fire. On August 2nd, the Old Trail fire swept through roughly 3,200 acres and destroyed 400 structures. Remains at 0% containment. As of Thursday, the fire has now destroyed more than 900 structures. Investigative documents revealed that Farinacci alleged actions were deliberate and heavily calculated. They say he monitored weather conditions through a wildfire tracking app and intentionally selected the days with severe weather warnings to set the fires. Investigators know that he brought time-delayed ignition components with him and timed the fire to maximize spread, remarking to detectives that conditions were ideal to start a blaze and let the fire take its course. The location was chosen to maximize damage. He decided to light the fire at this location because it knew it was going to get bad. By bad, he meant it would be a large fire, but claimed he did not intend for it to get as large as it did. Oh, yeah, I bet. Yeah, you should get credit for that. During police interviews, he admitted that his serial arson spree began on July 4th, 2025. Over the following 5 weeks alone, he claimed responsibilities for setting approximately 25 separate fires using lighters, primarily targeting brush areas near his residence at the Cooper River Apartments along the Spokane River and throughout the Continental Trail, documents show. I don't know. I don't know what the penalty should be for someone like this. I mean, it's just a disgrace. And it's a disgrace that the left just keeps hiding it. And I don't know what his political leanings are. I'm going to guess they're leftist, okay? But I wanted to follow up and conclude this first half of the podcast with these two stories, okay? So while they're all claiming climate again, global warming, climate change, all the lies, here's the real truth. Global greening hits new record as climate emergency fails to materialize. Global mean vegetation greening reached a record high last year, extending an already significant multi-decade upward trend, according to recent findings published in Nature magazine. Really, considered a valid publication. In fact, 2025 set a record for global vegetation greening with a steepening of the average trend. Top of the list was 77.6%, showing extra greening where was croplands, meaning more food has become available to boost global diets. Remember when they told us that global warming was going to kill crops and we were all going to starve? It's all a lie, folks. It's all a lie. The data is proving that. The greening story, a tale that gets more impressive every year, is largely absent from the mainstream media. It was certainly missed from the recent climate contribution from the sandwich boards Tim Stanley of the Telegraph, who made an unsourced claim that 1/3 of the agriculture production of Bangladesh is feared to be vanishing by 2050. Happily, there is no sign of that invented fear coming close to true, since agriculture production has more than doubled in that country since the turn of the century. Okay? Back in the real increasingly verdant world, the Nature published scientists note that herbaceous ecosystems such as grasslands and crop fields dominate the greening signal. 72% of grasslands showed greening, while the overall satellite data reveals 68% of total vegetation areas showed improvement over the last year. All right? It's just that simple. CO2 was not a poisonous gas, and yet governments all over Europe outlawed it, called it a poison. It's what plants eat. And it's what the plants then do what when they eat it? They turn green and create oxygen, which we breathe. This was an effort by the communist left to destroy the West. That's all it was. And so this last article is just really good, okay? When will the climate liars stop lying? That's the question. For nearly 40 years, the global warming cabal has spread fear and wasted resources on an emergency that doesn't exist. While their influence has begun to wane as their credibility has crashed and their lies have been exposed, the fabrications, exaggerations, and junk science continue. How much longer must we endure their campaign of rancid propaganda? The dawning moment of global warming movement was NASA scientist James Hansen's June 1988 testimony before the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. He said, "In my opinion, the greenhouse effects have been detected and is changing our climate now." There was evidence, he insisted, that Earth is warming by an amount which is too large to be a transient fluctuation, and the similarity of the warming to that expected from the greenhouse effects represents a very strong case of human global warming. And yet, 38 years later, there's been no climate catastrophe. Reality hasn't slowed the flood of lies, though. Let's take a look at a few. Washington Governor Jay Inslee reflexively blamed the state's wildfires on climate change. The one that I just told you, the guy admitted to arson. Soon thereafter, a man was arrested for the arson. And our friends at Powerline have noted wildfire damage in terms of acres burned peaked nearly a century ago, and in fact is down by more than 80%. Okay, the damage from fires is down. NPR wants Americans to believe climate change is now threatening a pillar of childhood, summer break, which has become increasingly dangerous through heat, wildfire smoke, floods, and storms. Retired meteorologist Anthony Watts says the premise is a false and ridiculous, with NPR relying almost entirely on anecdotes rather than evidence. That's why you have to fight this. They're still pushing this. Don't let your kid go to camp because of global warming. You know why? Because your kid would be better off if they frickin' went outside and went to camp. And they're trying to stop people from doing it with lies. And so we do these articles on our podcast so you can share them. You can use our chapters player on our podcast page. Go to the stories about the global greening and when will the climate lies stop. Click the link and get a URL that will take them right to that part of the video. Or go down on our list of articles on our podcast page and click the link and actually share this actual story with people. It's up to us to stop the stupid and educate our fellow citizens and defeat the propaganda, which unfortunately works unless you fight it. Okay? All right. So I'm thrilled that we were able to finish the first half of the show in the first hour. We're going to take a quick break now. You've been listening to the We the People Convention weekly news and opinion podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski, and we'll be back after these short messages. The We the People Convention news and opinion radio program is paid for by donors like you. You can donate to the We the People Convention and support our cause by going to wethepeopleconvention.org or by sending your check in any amount to We the People Convention, P.O. Box 6211, Akron, Ohio 44312. When you're playing a video, including our podcast, you'll see this little cloud button, And if you click it, it'll actually download the video to your hard disk. And this works on our podcast page as well. If you're playing our podcast, and it's going to be loud, so I won't play it for much, but there's our podcast playing, and you can see this little, download button. Okay. The other thing you got to notice on our podcast page is that there's a link here where you can send me a message about this podcast. Hey, it was great. Hey, I didn't like it. What, something was wrong, or here's a correction, that kind of thing. You can use that link. And then these are the stories that I covered in this particular podcast. And you'll see there's links that go to the stories, to the articles that I used in reporting on that. So you can click on that. You'll also see that you can sign up for our emails and text messages, but you can also watch our podcast on Roku TV and on Amazon Fire TV. And these are the instructions for doing that. So this is all on our podcast page, right on the front page where the yellow button was. So if you click there, this is our podcast page. These are the instructions for watching on Roku TV or Amazon Fire. And I watch our podcast on TV. It just feels more comfortable. So you can do that. We're also on Rumble. If you go to Rumble, you should join Rumble. And, it's Tom Z at WTPC. You'll see our podcast there. So you can get us a lot of different ways, including on Apple iTunes. And then this is an audio version of our podcast. If you click here, it'll just play the audio of the podcast. It will not, show you the video. So people can, listen to that while they're jogging or, working out, working in the yard, or just relaxing and just want to listen to the audio and not watch the video. And again, this is available on phone, on your iPad, on your laptop, on your computer, any way you want. And you can share this, whatever you see. If you're on a page that you really like, and you see an article that you think, geez, I've got to share this article, with someone in my family. You can send them an email by clicking on the little envelope. You can post it on Parler or MeWe. If you click on this, you get all kinds of options, where you can put it on Twitter or Facebook, whatever, which we don't support, but you can do whatever you want. So we ask that you share what you see on our We the People convention site, and that you get more people to look at it, because that's the whole idea here, to help educate people, inform them. And then, as I said before, Link, we're not just about talk, we're about action. And in my podcast every week, which is published every Saturday. So if the new podcast usually comes out every Saturday. And in that podcast, I will ask you to do certain things that will help protect and defend your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. So that's the We the People Convention website. Come back often, use it to be informed, and share it with others. Thanks a lot. All right. And we are back, and we're glad you're with us. We hope you enjoyed the first half of the podcast. I had a lot of asks in that. For those of you who are new to the podcast, yes, you're going to get news and opinion that affect your understanding of your world and your freedom, liberty, and prosperity. But the other part of this is we don't just talk, we act, right? I thank all of you who called Thune and your senators. And I was literally texting with Bernie Moreno last night at midnight, encouraging them to keep fighting for the SAVE Act. That's what we do. We're not just talking about defending our country. We're actually fighting to defend our country. And so, I had a lot of asks in that first half of the podcast. And so, I hope you will, be inspired to take action, because we can't just sit back and say, oh, Donald Trump's going to fix everything, because he can't. No one person can do that. And you just got to understand that it's not a spectator sport being an American citizen. It's a participatory sport. We have to be on the field playing. I need you to do that. Okay? So thank you for being with us. We appreciate it. We've got some good things here in the second half, including a lot of really good things at the end. I have a nice stack of things that I'm happy about. I hope you'll be happy about them too. And so we'll see how that goes. So let's start with the war, okay? Because again, the whole first half, I'm talking about, and Stephen Miller made it totally clear, and you should share that video of him saying, this is the biggest challenge we've ever had. The commies are in our gates. They're running New York City, right? And they're applying their communist, theories about stealing your property in New York, and they want to do it all across America. So we're fighting the red-green axis here in our country, but we're also fighting them globally. And that's what the war in Iran is about, okay? And so President Trump, there was a story that leaked, that was intentionally leaked, that said, we're out of ammunition. U.S. doesn't have any missiles. 80% of our stock is gone, okay? And the president and Karen Levitt and all those guys just said, that's total BS. It's total BS. Don't get me wrong. We fired a lot of missiles. Don't get me wrong. We've been sending frickin' $1 trillion a year for how many years? We got a lot of missiles. We got a lot of missiles, okay? I'm not afraid that we're running out of missiles. President Donald Trump said on August 6th that the United States has massive amounts of munitions, saying the larger amounts are being manufactured and shipped to the U.S. as needed. The president's social media comments followed anonymous sources reports from Reuters, CBS, and Washington Post that the United States was running low on certain armaments. Reuters citing anonymous sources, always anonymous sources, right? Because they're made up. They're liars. They're deep state, anti-American traitors, okay? Reported on August 4th that the U.S. Army has used up much of its global stockpile of highly accurate long-range missiles during the Iran war. CBS reported on July 23rd that the U.S. stockpile of interceptors, such as the Patriot and THAAD missile systems, had begun to dwindle due to the rapid pace at which they are being used in the conflict, okay? It's all bunk. White House Press Secretary Karen Levitt said she was at Camp David with Trump and Hegseth, and the reports of any tension between the two are inaccurate. This literally never happened, and we told the Washington Post that repeatedly. She said that this, and she used an expletive, story was shopped to many outlets by someone clearly out to disparage the secretary for whatever reason. Unfortunately for them, the president loves the secretary and thinks he's doing a tremendous job. Fake news. In August 6th, Truth Social post, Trump said, defense companies are building the largest number of plants and factories in our country's histories. The leakers of this information, these treasonous statements are being hunted down. Long-term jail sentences will be sought. And apparently, they found the leaker, and it was a general in the Pentagon, and he's been relieved of duty, and we'll see if he gets charged. But that's our problem, folks. The enemy is within. They've been doing this since Woodrow Wilson, right? When the communists started first getting into our government. And then, we had the hearings, about the communists. And we didn't get them all. We didn't get half of them. This is just a fact. And Trump is fighting decades of this stuff. And there you saw another example of it happening. This was, I think, an important story. And I don't imagine you heard it. Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Pakistan, Islamic NATO-style defense pact signed amid Iran war. Whoa. Okay, think about this. Look at those names now. On Friday, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan signed a major defense agreement as leaders gathered in the city of Makkah, Saudi Arabia. It seeks to strengthen joint deterrence and expanding defense cooperation, the Saudi press agency wrote. It is essentially a NATO-style agreement for the Muslim world, given that it stipulates and formalizes that an armed attack on any of the countries will be treated as an attack on all of them. Now, understand, man, you're talking Turkey, which is one of the biggest militaries in the globe, okay? And Pakistan that has nuclear weapons, and Saudi Arabia that has trillions of dollars. This ain't no small deal. Formally called the Makkah Joint Defense Agreement, it reflects the three nations' commitment to bolstering their collective security. The combined estimated population of these Muslim-majority countries is 380 million, or according to high estimates, approaching 400 million. That's bigger than the United States. Al Jazeera comments on the significance of the historic pact as follows. This is more than a diplomatic get-together and signing of an agreement. This is essentially put three of the largest Muslim populations together on a roadmap for joint peace, for deterring any act of aggression against them, for making sure they are in tune with each other when it comes to intelligence sharing, gathering all the information that is required, and also enhancing cooperation in all sorts of spheres, whether it's energy, defense expenditures, manufacturing, and others. Pakistan brings with it, obviously, its nuclear arsenal, battle-hardened military, and munitions it has been supplying. Turkey, with its advanced drone and munition systems, is a NATO member combined with its economic power, Saudi Arabia. The three of them combined now present a force that will take this region toward a different security architecture than the one in place over the last few decades, especially in the wake of the Iran war. Okay? What is this about? It's about us, the U.S., getting the hell out of the Middle East, out of Afghanistan, out of Iran, out of everywhere, because we were there to start with because of Saudi oil. Go back to the 50s, go back to George Bush Sr., okay? We were dependent, the United States of America depended on Saudi oil, and we had to be there to defend it in order to defend ourselves. Those days are over. The troops being there needs to be over. This is a huge step in that direction. You should share that story with people who don't understand that this is what Trump is doing in Iran, trying to solve the problem once and for all. Okay? Now, we covered this story last week, and now it expanded. Michigan reports water system cyber attacks, joining 7 other states. Last week, we talked about Wisconsin water systems that were getting hacked. And these are, we think, from Iran. Michigan has joined a list of at least 7 states that have reported cyber attacks on their water systems over the past week. Dale George, Director of Communications for the Michigan Department of Environmental, Great Lakes, and Energy, said Michigan received the FBI's notice to states last week, warning of attempts to tamper with operational technology of water systems. Following the notification, we received a number of reports from Michigan communities indicating activity consistent with the federal agencies described. All systems continue to operate safely. Issues were addressed by local operators, and there are no impacts posed to public health concern. Okay? Now, Glenn Beck had a great rant on this on the radio about what I said to you just a few minutes ago about we, the people, have to fight the enemy. Not just the president, not just our elected officials. And so Glenn Beck talked about this. It was really well done. And that's why I really appreciate it. It was a lot of work for him to do this. But basically explained that the U.S. water system is not interconnected and is not controlled by the federal government at all. Every little town, village, burg, city, whatever, has their own muni water system. And a lot of them are underfunded, underfinanced. And some of these fixes they need to make, they can't afford. Glenn Beck said, and I'm asking you as a direct ask, every one of you that watches this, I'm asking you this week to call your water department and share the story link of this with them by email or text. But call them and say, I just want to check and see if you got the notification of where these Iranian or other hacks are coming from that are taking over these other water systems, and have you been able to patch the system? That's all I'm asking you to do. And if they say yes, then you go, great, that's wonderful, and tell others in your community that they take an action. If they say, what are you talking about? You got to say, let me share this with you, okay? And you should contact, the federal EPA or Department of Homeland Security. If they say, yeah, but we need to buy some equipment and it's not in the budget until next year, then you got to say, whoa, this is, critical. And so who do we need to talk to in local government to move some funds to get that done? Do you see what I'm talking about? About participation and not being a spectator? Will you do that? You can do that. It's not hard. Please take action to protect and defend your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. And what's more important to that than your frickin' water, right? We got to defend the land, don't we? And speaking of that, FBI, Kash Patel, came out and said they stopped 715 planned terror attacks last year. That's a ton, folks. That's like 2 a day. That's a ton. The FBI prevented 715 planned terror attacks on U.S. soil last year in an exclusive interview with the Epoch Times, which will air on August 8th, which is today. Patel shared the previous unreported number of foil attacks that stemmed from ISIS and other terror-affiliated organizations, as well as details from some of those takedowns. In December of last year, the FBI shut down 4 terrorist attacks in 30 days. That's a pretty monumental achievement. Those attacks were going to take place in Southern California, Texas, Florida, and New York State. He said, before these individuals who wanted to disrupt America's holidays last year, literally, and killed dozens, if not hundreds of people and caused a mass casualty event, we went and took them all down. The only similarity among the 4 separate operations was the fact that they each had the same goal. They were not the same group. So there's all these different people doing it. Adversaries are continually looking to attack us on American soil using illegal immigrants, sympathetic U.S. citizens, and foreign nationals, he said, knowing that the FBI must practice and perfect mix of patience and action. We want to go out at the right time to dismantle the entire criminal enterprise, not just get a couple of them. So there's kind of a wait and see element to this. He stressed how quickly his agents must act sometimes to prevent tragedy, like the one that was going to happen at the UFC event, at the White House 250 celebration. So, I just want you to know that I think it's pretty remarkable that they have been this successful, because all we were told is that, we're so vulnerable, that Iran has sleeper cells all over the United States, and with just a secret message, they could wage jihad on us. Well, guess what, man? That message went out, and there ain't been no damn jihad. The jihad is on the political side, and that's where you and I got to come in and vote to defeat it, okay? So that was just good stuff. So this story, I want to, again, we're about truth, we're about perspective, we're about honesty, and we're about defeating the propaganda. So this story comes out, how the world views China versus the U.S. in 2026. And I thought, okay, what does this say? The United States and China are the 2 most preeminent superpowers, but views of them vary widely by country. This visualization by visual capitalist Gabriel Cohen compares approval ratings for Beijing and Washington using survey results from more than 42,000 respondents across 36 countries. So they came up with this list, okay? And basically what it says, public opinion in many countries has shifted in China's favor amid challenges in U.S. diplomacy and foreign policy. In 27 of the 36 countries surveyed, China received a higher approval rating than the United States. These including allies and neighbors such as Canada and Mexico, okay? So they give a list of all the things. So I went to an AI, and I said, the one thing that was missing from this article was, this is now in 2026. How did that compare historically? Well, just last year, the same poll, it was the opposite. In 2025, the United States had a 49% favorable when China was 37% favorable. But in 26, it switched, okay? And why is that? The war. It's about the war, right? And so, there's a Pew 2025 survey covering 24 countries that could be directly compared. And in 2024, 49% of people said they favored they supported the U.S. and 37% said China. Okay, but that's what happens, is things change when you take action. And guess what? When you're giving billions of our tax dollars away to these countries, they like America a lot more when we're stupid and we're giving money away. It's a little different when President Trump says, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're cutting funds. Anyway, that's all about perspective. And again, so I say this every week, but you got to know this. The enemy's China. China has been at war with the United States for at least 30 years, if not 50 years. We haven't been at war with them. Now we are. That's what Venezuela was about. That's what Cuba's about. That's what Iran's about. Okay? And this is why. Electric vehicle exec identified as CCP member has given $450,000 to Democrats this campaign season. Okay? And so who's this guy? Pin-Ni, P-I-N-N-I, an auto executive who resides in the United States but appears to still be an active member of the Chinese Communist Party, donated $61,000 to the Democratic campaigns in the second quarter of 2026, bringing his total to $450,000 so far this year. According to campaign finance disclosures published last month, reviewed by the Washington Free Beacon, Ni gave $15,000 to the campaign of Illinois Lieutenant Governor Julian Stratton, her state's Democratic nominee for Senate, $10,000 to the Illinois Democratic Party's federal account, and $5,000 to the campaign of Roy Cooper, the Democratic nominee for Senate in North Carolina. He also made donations to Senate Ben Ray Lewis of New Mexico campaign, Reverend Greg Landsman's Democrat in Ohio campaign, a congressional nominee Janelle Stelson, a Democrat in PA's campaign, and political committees affiliated with Senator Elizabeth Warren. Okay? So here you have a person living in the United States who says he's a electric vehicle executive, and he does. He has a company. The company is called let's see here, Wanzing, headquartered in Illinois since December of 2025. Okay? And they're infiltrating the United States. This is what I said to you about our political leaders have been allowing the Chinese to operate in our country with impunity. Do you think Elon Musk could go to China and fund Christians who are trying to bring Catholicism or the Christian religion in China without being shot immediately? Why do we allow this? That's the disconnect. You got to speak out against it. It doesn't help. And then this thing, I told you on our website at wethepeopleconvention.org, you saw the Natalie Winter story about how China paid top U.S. journalists to go to China and get indoctrinated and then come back and write favorable stories about China. And that story's on our website, and I read that to you, and we're not talking about little people. We're talking about top people. And then I said, the dummies at the Democratic Socialists of America, and these are the dumbest people you've ever met. Just watch them speaking on TV. These people are, they've got advanced degrees in stupidity, okay? And they said, we're thrilled. A bunch of us got to go to China, and the Chinese government is excited about what we're doing. Don't spill the beans or anything, right? Okay? And so Natalie Winters follows up with this story report. Top retired U.S. generals joined years-long dialogue with Chinese military influence groups. Man, how? How could this happen? For more than a decade, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs, combat commanders, cabinet officials, and members of Congress participated in military dialogue organized with a Chinese group identified by congressional investigators as a front engaged in intelligence collection and propaganda and perception management. Some ended up on China's payroll shortly after these meetings. The Communist Party did not need to penetrate the Pentagon to gain access to America's military leadership. It built a private network around it. For more than a decade, some of the most powerful retired officers in the United States participated in closed-door meetings with senior Chinese military leaders. Discussions covered Taiwan, the South China Sea, missile defense, cybersecurity, and the future of relations between the two militaries, right? Okay? The American participants included General Peter Pace, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Admiral William Bill Owens, former vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of the Navy, General John Abrazad, former commander of the U.S. Central Command, General Raymond Odero, former Army Chief of Staff, Admiral Jonathan Greenert, former Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Timothy Keating, former commander of the U.S. Pacific Command. It goes on and on and on. I mean, it's in this article. You can read their frickin' names. How is this not treason? Under what guise are they sitting down and meeting with Chinese military to talk about these things without protecting U.S. interests? It's the enemy within. And you got to read and share that story at WeThePeopleConvention.org because it just blew my mind. My goodness gracious. So then I want to bring your attention to what's going on in Canada, because there's two interesting stories here. A vote on leaving Canada is the gamble of a lifetime for Alberta's leader, okay? Danielle Smith, the premier of this rugged, oil-rich province, is regarded as a maverick with a reputation for taking political risks. Now she's embarking on perhaps the biggest gamble of them all. Smith has paved the way for a referendum on October 19th that will ask if the province should stay in Canada or start the process toward a second binding referendum, or whether to leave it for good. The idea has jolted Canada, which depends on Alberta's oil and gas revenue and is in the midst of a trade fight with the U.S. They treat Alberta like a red-haired stepchild. They just take their money and give them nothing, and they're sick of it, and they want their independence. They'd like to join the United States. I've watched the separatist movement since I got involved in politics back in the 90s, and I don't think I've ever seen the support as high as it was after the Liberals got elected last year, Smith said in an interview referring to Prime Minister Carney's party. She said 700,000 Albertans out of about 5 million have signed petitions either for leaving or staying. I think we need to have the debate and have the answer, she said. The outcome will have far-reaching consequences for Smith's legacy. Okay, who cares? You're representing your citizens. It's not about your legacy. Smith insists she wants Alberta to remain part of Canada, albeit with substantial autonomy. But she made it easier for separatists to have a vote, and critics say she has fanned their grievances. Okay? And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And then I was really happy to see this because Canada is way woke. I mean, woke as a joke. They are, I mean, they're arresting people for putting Twitter, for hate crimes for writing something on X. Okay. They're just crazy. So this was shocking to me. Quebec minister ordered to personally pay $60,000 for canceling pro-life event. I thought, this is cool. What's this about? Former Quebec tourism minister Caroline Prolux has been ordered to personally pay, I like that part, the personal part, personally pay more than $60,000 in damages after Quebec Superior Court judge ruled she unlawfully canceled a Christian conference because of its pro-life message. The decision released Friday found that she had acted in an arbitrary and abusive manner when she ordered Quebec City Convention Center to cancel a rental agreement with Harvest Ministries International's Faith, Fire, and Freedom Conference just 10 days before it was scheduled to begin. The country erupted after Radio Canada asked her, this Prolux person, about the conference. After reviewing the organization's website and discovering its opposition to abortion, she directed her chief of staff to instruct the convention center to terminate the rental agreement. In a message written and cited by the court, the government stated it had serious reservations about allowing the event in a public venue because its views conflicted with the establishment, right, with Quebec's values, while suggesting organizers should find a private venue instead, which they couldn't do. She gets to pay a $60,000 fine. I think that's great. I think we need more elected officials to be personally accountable. And I think that's awesome. Okay. I put, this story up here because I just think it's really an important story for us. And that is everyone deserves the right to try, but Montana takes a big step towards setting a new standard for medical freedom. Okay. And, this is, you guys have heard about medical freedom, and most of it, Donald Trump has passed a right to try bill federally. He's got executive order, RFK Jr.'s for that. But generally, it means if you have a terminal illness, you should have the right to try any drug you want to try to save your life, whether it's been through testing or been FDA approved or whatever. And I think we agree with that. But Montana has gone one step further. And they basically said, you don't have to be terminal. You have a freedom to protect your health. And so if you can afford it, if you're going to pay for it, you should be able to access it. I think that's great. I think our members in Montana, do you think it's great? Write to me at info@wethepeopleconvention.org. And if you think it's great, did you reach out to your representatives and say thank you for passing this? Because again, think about it. Why do I have to be on the verge of dying to have the right to try to make my life better? If I have some other illness that's really making my life hard, why shouldn't I be able to try that? So hats off to Montana. And maybe other states will pick that up. Maybe you ought to share that story in your state, right? That would be a good thing. Since we're way out west in Montana, this is another good thing. U.S. hits jackpot after finding multi-million ton critical mineral reserve in Nevada. Okay. A U.S. critical minerals company has recently confirmed the nation's largest known tungsten resource as its Railroad Valley Minerals Project in Nye County, Nevada, despite a NASA land withdrawal restricting exploration across part of the site. In an updated source report, 3-proton lithium said that the project hosts an inferred resource of 1.78 million tons of tungsten. The company revealed that the deposit is part of the mineral system that also contains world-class resources of lithium, potash, and boron. As per 3PL, the deposit reported 5 times larger than the biggest tungsten resource currently listed in the U.S. comes at a time when the country relies heavily on imports of this for this strategic metal. Its situ value is established at about $152 billion based on current market prices. So that's quite a find for this company to find a resource that's worth $152 billion. However, exploration across approximately 17 square miles of the project remains restricted by NASA's land withdrawal. The space agency uses that area to calibrate satellite instruments and says mining could interfere with the facility's operation. So again, we are in trouble as a nation because we stopped mining in our country. And by the way, President Trump had an announcement on Friday that the schools, there's mining colleges, like out in Colorado, there's the Colorado School of Mining. And they need miners because now we're finding these things. And they were asking for $10 million to help them recruit and train miners. And President Trump said, no. He gave them $100 million and said, let's go. Let's start digging. Because if we're going to be able to defend ourselves against China, we've got to have our own mineral resources. So there you go. President Trump, again, at the base level, addressing our concerns at the granular level, when all the politicians we've elected all our life just let our country go to hell, just like Washington, D.C. They never did a damn thing, and he's fixing the reflecting pool, he's fixing the monuments, he's fixing the roads, he's fixing the ballroom in the White House. And oh yeah, they just had another court rule. He can't do the ballroom. Yeah, read the judge that dissented to that 2-1 decision and how they explain this is totally bogus. No court has ever been able to tell the president what they can do at the White House. All through history, presidents have remodeled the White House, and so he's going to appeal it to the Supreme Court, okay? Because why? He wants America to be great again. He wants us to be the best, and he's acting to do that, okay? Now, this way is one way we're acting to do it, but I found this funny, so I thought I'd include it. Paperwork is driving people away from food stamps. Good. This is from the Federalist, which does a lot of good work. If you don't read the Federalist, go to their website. The Federalist is a great publication. Just as this administration cannot afford to let up on mass deportations, it can't do enough to choke every bit of oxygen out of this country's obscene welfare problem, starting with food stamps. For proof, look no further than a New York Times article from late July, which was the basis of an episode for the paper's daily podcast this week. The article was headlined, if you can even believe it, "Faced with piles of new paperwork, people are losing food stamps." Oh my! Imagine supposedly relying on food stamps to feed yourself or your family, but choosing to starve because of piles of new paperwork that you just can't deal with, right? Well, of course, nobody is starving, At worst, they're drinking water instead of bottles of soda. Seeking sweetened beverages are the second most purchased category of items on food stamps. The entire program is a racket, and the degree of entitlement oozes through the Times article like an infected pimple way past its due date. It can take months, the Times said, to reach besieged caseworkers, and officers have gone as far as asking people with panhandling income for verification from strangers dropping cash in their jar, the Times reported, using a steep drop in Arizona's supplemental nutrition assistance enrollments on a case study. Arizonans losing SNAP say they are skipping meals, quarreling over food, and missing rent payments to restock pantry shelves. For the first time, monthly visits to states' food banks, private charities have exceeded enrollment in SNAP, the government's main nutrition safety net. If reading that didn't fill you with a molten rage, you're either too rich to care or you're stupid. The fact that it is treated as a tragedy or even a controversy, that anyone might be inconvenienced the slightest to get free groceries, tells you how desperately wrong things are going. Try reaching a human being when there's a problem with your AT&T or Verizon service and then complain to me about how long it took to get food stamps. I love that line. You guys know what that's all about. This is from an actual segment of the episode of The Daily regarding new food stamp paperwork requirements imposed by President Trump. It used to be that the applicant could just walk into the office and tell a caseworker how many people lived in their household and who they were. Now, applicants have to go to their neighbors or friends and get a written declaration of who lives in the household. And if their neighbor or friend failed to sign the letter or failed to put their phone number in the letter, you have to start over again. God forbid a person supposedly on the verge of starvation get, are you ready for it? A written declaration attesting to the validity of their household side, lest they have to start all over again. It must be hell on earth, right? It's awesome. It's awesome. It's all a scam. There's 106 million people, including those people who are bitching about how hard it is to get their food stamps, who should be working. We got 7 million jobs to fill. You could be a miner. We got on our podcast page at the end, I've got the links where Meta, Facebook, will pay $155 million to train you in a skilled trade and give you $100,000 a year job. But you're going to stand in line for food stamps because you're fat, lazy, and stupid. That's right. It wasn't supposed to be a way of life. It was supposed to be a lifeline for people who got in some trouble and needed some time to work out of it. That's not what it is it? And now we know through the article I did in the first half of the show from J.D. Vance, yeah, at least $230 billion is fraud. It's trillions. It's at least $2 trillion a year is fraud. So I thought you'd love that article. This was the story about the jobs report, and I want to explain this to you because it was a little confusing because, right away it's bad news. July jobs shock. U.S. lost 23,000 workers below lowest estimates as unemployment drops to 4.1%. So how can you lose 23,000 jobs, but unemployment goes down? So I'll try to explain it to you. Ahead of today's job report, in our payroll preview, we warned that July has emerged as a very poor month for jobs. And boy, were we right. Moments ago, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that in July, the U.S. labor force shrank by a whopping 23,000, sharply lower than from a downsized revised 20,000 in June and from 57,000 in May. And the worst point since a negative 156,000 in February. So, okay, we lost 23,000 jobs. That's not a huge amount, okay? So why does it, why did the unemployment rate go down then? Yet despite the dismal establishment points, the unemployment rate actually declined from 4.2% to 4.1%, which is a result of the number of unemployed workers declining by 178,000, more than the decline in the employed workers, which was shrank from 87,000. So in other words, the number of unemployed workers shrunk by 178,000, which means people who were unemployed got jobs, but the decline of 23,000 jobs lost was people who had jobs who lost jobs. So that's why unemployment went down, because actually more frickin' people are working. Okay, among the major work groups, the unemployment rates for teenagers was 12.1%, and people who are Hispanic at 4.6% decline in July. The jobless rates for adult men, 3.9%, adult women, 3.7%, and people who are whites, 3.6%, blacks, 6.3%, or Asians, 4%, showed little change over the month. Basically, this report is about nothing. Jobs are out there, jobs are good, well, and the pay is going up, but with there's changes, and a lot of it had to do, they said, with the Olympics, not the Olympics, the World Cup, because a lot of people had jobs with the World Cup. It ended and then those people lost their jobs. So I don't know, but just put it in perspective. Again, we always try to keep perspective. I'm not trying to gaslight you. I'm not trying to say losing 23,000 jobs is good. It's not, but it's not horrible either. Perspective. This is great news, and we're going to start our series of great news things. Exclusive. Blue State Hospital bows to DOJ, ends trans procedures for kids. I'm loving this, baby. Connecticut Children's Medical Center in Woke, Connecticut, has entered an agreement with the Department of Justice not to perform transgender procedures on children, the Daily Wire can first report. The move comes as part of the Justice Department's nationwide effort to end transgender pediatric programs, including on President Trump's executive order, building on President Trump's executive order ending federal support for such procedures. Connecticut's children agreed not to perform sex rejection procedures on minors, including puberty blockers, hormones, and surgeries, according to documents shared with the Daily Wire. The hospital also agreed to pay a monetary penalty and significantly to dedicate $500,000 in Medicare for detransitioners to help you get out of the mess they put you in. Okay? This is on top of other hospitals. They're waging this fight, and yet in California, in Massachusetts, there's we had a story that there's still the AMA, the American Medical Association, said we still think this is good care. What a bunch of dumb commie SOBs. What a bunch of children haters. If you know anyone who's a medical doctor, you need to bring that AMA thing up to them and say, what the heck's the matter with you? What the heck's the matter with you? It's real simple, kids. There's no such thing as a trans kid. It's a made-up word by the Chinese communists who paid to invent it here in the United States to destroy your church, your family, your community, our culture, by convincing woke idiots who are indoctrinated in colleges that you could just change your gender by wishing it so. It's insanity. Make sure you point it out. Never use the word trans without saying there's no such thing as trans. They have a dysphoria, gender dysphoria. They are mentally ill people. They're not trans kids. No such thing. It's made up. This was really fun because, you guys know that I've been a big fan of Milei, who is the president of Argentina. He was the guy, he did something that Trump should be eager to import. And he's the guy that had the chainsaw and said he's going to cut government spending. And the day he got inaugurated, he cut like 60,000 government workers. And Elon Musk used the chainsaw with Milei. Milei gave him a chainsaw for Doge, except we didn't cut crap. Okay. So Milei has done wonders. And he just did something that we need to do. And I wanted to highlight that. Argentina's President Javier Milei continued to govern in ways that conservatives in America can only dream of. Now he's come up with a new proposal that the U.S. would do well to copy. When Milei came into office, he promised to slash government spending, balance the budget, embrace free trade, deregulate the economy, and get hyperinflation under control. Experts such as the New York Times clown show Paul Krugman said it would end in disaster, don't you know, because socialism works, not capitalism. Milei lived up to his promises. Month over month, inflation was running at 25%. You and I are dying, okay, because Biden had a year we were at 9% inflation. We're now at like 3% inflation. Their inflation was 25% a month, okay? It is below 2% now. Argentina ran a budget surplus in 2024 for the first time since 2008. The poverty rate has plunged, and in July, the country got its third credit upgrade in 3 months. Even the Washington Post marveled that the message from the ratings agencies is that President Javier Milei's market-oriented reforms are working, and yet the Washington Post is supporting the Democrat socialists and the communist takeover of our country, right? What a disconnect. Now, he's put forth a plan designed to keep Argentina's government in check for the long term. He's calling it the fiscal shackle, and it's part of a larger reform of the central bank's charter that he's sending to the country's Congress, possibly for a mid to late August vote. Under this plan, if the government runs a deficit for several months in a row, the Congress gets a warning. Then the shackles kick in, suspending non-essential government functions and basically freezing everything else in place. No new spending, no new contracts, no new hires until lawmakers get the budget back in balance. But the kicker is that while the government is shackled, top politicians, ministers, undersecretaries, senators, etc., even the president won't get paid. We've been saying that forever, man. You got a government shutdown, and Chucky Schumer and all the Dems are getting paid while the TSA agents weren't? Yeah, let's try this. For the first time in history, in our history, if politics doesn't do its homework, politics will pay the cost, not the people, Milei said. What a great man. What a great leader. And that's in Argentina, folks. That's in Argentina. It's just joyous. This is joyous. Trump administration locates 148,000 unaccounted for illegal immigrant children. Okay? Why is this joyous? Because the Biden administration let literally sex trafficked like 450,000 children come over the border without their parents to be abused by perverted men and sold into sex slavery. And we let it happen. And you people who voted for Kamala and who voted for Joe Biden and think you're such wonderful people, yeah, you sold children into sex slavery in the United States. And Donald Trump is cleaning it up. And you hate that Donald Trump because he's a fascist, don't you know? Yeah, okay? Homeland Security Secretary Mark Wayne Mullins says the Trump administration has located 148,000 unaccounted for children who came into the United States illegally. We are taking historic action to protect one of the most vulnerable victims of the Biden administration's open border crisis, migrant children. We have already located 148,000 of these children, and we will not stop fighting until every last one is rescued. He linked to a post made by President Trump earlier this week showing a graph citing Department of Homeland Security figures indicated about 12,000 missing children were located between February and July. As of July, about 330 such children remain missing, according to DHS figures. 330,000 children. They don't know where they are. You think they're in a good place? You think they're in a happy place? Yeah. You think they were brought to America to live the American dream, or are they living the most horrific nightmare a child can live, to be preyed upon by depraved men and women every day? Yeah, that's what the Democrat, Communist, Socialist, Islamic Party did. That's a fact. Share that story with people who think they should vote for Democrats and not Republicans this election. So this was, the big story. Senate panel votes to hold Fauci in contempt, after he pled the fifth 111 times and wouldn't testify. Okay. And that's great. And, a Senate subcommittee on August 6th voted to hold Anthony Fauci, in contempt of Congress. He basically, they're saying he had a pardon. He should have testified. By not testifying, he held Congress in contempt. When voluntary cooperation ends, Congress must be able to compel compliance with its lawful demands. That is Congress' compulsory interest, Senator Rand Paul, Kentucky, said, chairman of the panel, before the vote. A subpoena is not an invitation. A subpoena with no consequences is not a subpoena. It's a suggestion. He was subpoenaed. Senator Gary Peters, Democrat of Michigan, the top Democratic committee, said before the vote that Republicans were offering the resolution without making a case that there is a legal basis for holding Fauci in contempt. Okay, the committee hand-delivered the contempt resolution to the Department of Justice, and, nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. So I want to, and I said last week, that there's 3 states that are investigating Fauci for crimes in their states, which his pardon does not cover. And I've asked you to call your Secretary of States to say, why aren't we doing that? Why aren't you doing that? He's a criminal. He killed millions of people. He's Joseph Mengele of the 21st century. He needs to be held accountable, and everyone else, from Deborah Bricks to all the people in the NIH, to all the people who were involved in this, the Wuhan lab and all that, all the pharmaceutical people. You got to keep pushing for this. But now I want to go back to President Trump. Last week, I asked you to call President Trump and demand that he take the challenge to the Fauci pardon to the Supreme Court on 2 levels. First of all, that it was a pardon for no crime, that you were pardoning people who hadn't committed a crime. That's not a pardon. Second of all, that it was the auto pen. You didn't even do it, so it's not valid. I still believe that should happen. But some of you wrote to me and some of you talked to me and said, you know what, Tom? Trump's probably not doing that. Because if, God forbid, we lose the elections in November, I think Trump's going to pardon everyone in his administration for crimes committed or not committed, going all the way back to 10 years like Biden did, right? You could see that. I could see Trump doing that, and I would probably be a smart thing to do for Trump and everybody who worked for them. But how is that for you and I? How is that for America? How is it for our Constitution if certain people, powerful people in our culture can get pardoned like Hunter Biden, where he could commit anything and it would be forgiven? No holds barred. But you and I could be held accountable for everything we did. Is that what we've got in our Constitution? No, it's not. And that's why, as good as it is and as smart as it is for Trump to maybe do that, I don't want him to do that. Now, there's an interesting twist to that, okay? Here's an interesting twist. It would be very rich for Trump to then say, I'm going to pardon everyone in my administrations, both administrations for the last 12 years, for crimes they may or may not have committed from 2015, on to 2028, and maybe sign them with an auto pen as well, and then have the Democrats have to take it to the Supreme Court to overrule it, because if they did, then all their people could be prosecuted. How's that for mutually assured destruction? That's an interesting thought, but it's not what we want. That's not what our Constitution calls for. It calls for equal justice under the law, and the people who break the law should be held accountable, just like you and I would be. All right. So, but it's fine. They referred Fauci, to DOJ for contempt. Let's see what happens. But, I'm looking forward to the states. That's going to be a better thing. This was good news. Judge dismisses Oath Keeper's January 6th case, saying he must defer to the executive branch. I'm loving it because this judge was one of the biggest criminal jerks in the whole January 6th thing. A federal judge dismissed a criminal case Tuesday against 8 members of the Oath Keepers after the Justice Department sought to erase their convictions, saying he was required to defer to the executive branch despite believing the decision was not in the public interest. After the U.S. Court of Appeals for D.C. vacated the defendant's convictions at the Justice Department's request, prosecutors returned to the district court and asked Judge Amit Mehta to dismiss the superseding indictments with prejudice. Mehta granted the government's motion to dismiss the indictment against the defendants, including Oath Keepers founder Elmer Stewart Rhodes, who's just been treated horribly. And we owe him millions of dollars for what our country did to him unfairly. He was entrapped by the FBI, and that still has to come out. The defendants have been convicted in 2 trials of offenses stemming from the January 6th breach of the U.S. Capitol. Most were convicted of seditious conspiracy to obstruct official proceedings, conspiracy to prevent members of Congress from carrying out their duties, obstruction of official proceedings. So a lot of those charges were thrown out. Mehta wrote that the Justice Department did not argue the evidence was insufficient. that prosecutors committed misconduct, or that the defendants were wrongfully convicted. Instead, the department said dismissal served the interests of justice and set its prosecutorial discretion. The judge rejected several of the government's justification, calling its argument that dismissal protected defendants from harassment a strange argument. He also questioned the department's reliance on President Donald Trump's January 20th proclamation, noting Trump commuted the defendants' prison sentences but did not pardon them or direct dismissal of their case. Meta said dismissing the case would erase the legal judgment that the defendants committed crimes against the United States itself, and concluded that doing so was not in the public interest. Despite his disagreement, Meta said precedent required him to grant the motion because courts generally cannot reject a prosecutor's decision to dismiss charges. In the closing paragraphs of the opinion, Meta wrote that the ruling marked the end of the January 6th prosecutions, saying the outcome diminished the gravity of that day. We should diminish the gravity of that day, denigrates the work of prosecutors and law enforcement officials who secured these convictions. No. It reverses these illegal convictions and the horrible injustices these federal officials committed, and excuses criminal acts that disrupted the peaceful transfer of presidential power. He said the court cannot write a different ending. He was forced to admit those things, but he doesn't believe them. But when J6 prisoners were in front of that clown and they said the same thing, I didn't do it, I didn't break the law, I didn't do anything, yeah, he gave them nothing but jail sentences. This guy needs to be impeached, but that was good news. Congratulations to the Oath Keepers. Now let's get them restitution, which, oh, by the way, the confirmation of the new D&I guy that was made, that Mike Lee said at the beginning of the podcast, came at getting rid of the restitution for the January 6ers. Trump's got to find a way to get that back. Okay, 2 more stories and we'll wrap it up. This is a great story. Networks admit hero, good guy with a gun, ended Idaho mass shootings. This is awesome because the story is always that guns are bad and we should take them away from everyone because they use them irresponsibly. They never cover the stories that guns prevent crimes, millions of them a year. The statistics are overwhelming. The whole gun issue in this nation is as much of a contrived lies as transgenderism and frickin' climate. Okay, which we've debunked in this podcast, and we'll be debunking the next one in the next story. Let's see. The FN57, which is a gun, is about to explode in popularity. That's the make and model of the pistol Jordan Salinas used to help end the mass shooting at the Idaho In-N-Out Burger over the weekend. His actions that Saturday afternoon were so undeniably heroic that even the liberal broadcast network could not avoid calling him a hero and crediting him with saving an unknown number of lives. One even shared some badass quotes from him. Video shows Jordan Salinas, a citizen who returned fire, taking on the shooter and likely saving lives, reported ABC's Trevor Ault on Monday's Good Morning America. He immediately followed up with a soundbite from the Twin Falls Police Chief Matthew Hicks, who explained that the affected Salinas and an off-duty state trooper had on the incident at a press conference. We believe their actions helped drive the suspect away from the scene, preventing further casualties. All those who shared a couple of quotes from Salinas gave to a local paper about the shooting. Salinas said, there are tasks that needs to be done, and then we're the ones that need to do it. Meaning you see something, you got to take action. He drew the shooter's attention and drew his fire. You can see it in the videos. And then, the shooter shot himself. It's basically, clear as a bell that this is why you carry and you use it in a situation, because the police aren't going to save you. And that's great to see. The leftist media have to report it. And now I can't wait for the leftist media to have to report this. This is awesome. Watch this.
I've seen people online say that Enes Kanter Freedom is making a mockery of women's sports, but that's not at all what he's doing. He's making a mockery of the people who have made a mockery of women's sports. And so I think it's fantastic. I think it's brilliant and genius. The WNBA now has the opportunity to put their money where their mouth is. They can either recruit and sign Enes Kanter Freedom to a WNBA team, or they can prove themselves as total I mean, just absolutely bigots who don't believe the things that they're actually advocating for. So I think it's really brilliant.
So what they're talking about is this former number one draft pick in the NBA. His name is Enes, E-N-E-S, Kanter, K-A-N-T-R, Freedom. Okay, that's his name. Has declared to put himself up in the WNBA draft next year to play. He says, I've read all their rules and all their bylaws, and all I have to do is say, I think I'm a woman, and they have to take me. This guy will destroy the WNBA, and it needs to be destroyed because it's a hoax being committed and funded by the leftist NBA funds the money-losing WNBA. No one watches the WNBA. It's a joke, okay? And they shouldn't even make any of them. They lose millions of dollars a year, okay? Despite Caitlin Clark drawing some fans and stuff like that, it's a joke. And the fact that they are attacking the members of their league who are saying men shouldn't be in women's sports, and now they're going to have to not let a man come into sports. Oh, it's going to be beautiful. And another former NBA player has now joined up, and you watch, there'll probably be 100 men saying, we want to play in the WNBA next year, and it's going to be a thing of beauty. I love it. Social media is going nuts. Clay and Buck are going berserko. This is the end of the WNBA. It needs to end. It is there to pitch a lie, to confuse people about the truth. And the truth is, there's no such thing as trans. It's a mental illness called gender dysphoria, and it was created by the communist Chinese. And you can find the article at the WeThePeopleConvention.org website, where a Chinese billionaire funded the whole trans movement in the United States. Now we're going to blow it up. It's beautiful. All right? So we're going to end our podcast with those happy stories, a hero with a gun, and the WNBA being exposed for the garbage that it is. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Tell people about it. Share it. Why? Because if you act on the things we talked about in the first half of the podcast and the second half of the podcast, they will too. The more people who take action, the more we will accomplish to protect and defend our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. If you have comments, if you have ideas for stories, if there's something we didn't cover that's important, write to us at info@wethepeopleconvention.org. info@wethepeopleconvention.org. If you disagree with me, if you can debate my facts, if you can show I said something that wasn't true, we will correct it. Because we will never intentionally lie to you, because we will never lie to ourselves, to our spouse, to our family, to our church, to our community, to our business fellow employees, to our customers. You can't live a life of lies. You have to live a life of truth. That's what real freedom, liberty, and prosperity is about. Live a life of truth and share the truth and defend the truth against the propaganda. Okay? Sure appreciate you taking your time to watch the podcast this week. Okay? God willing, we'll both be back next week. Enjoy summer. It's going fast. Okay? But take action. It's not a spectator sport. Be a participant in protecting and defending your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. All right, I'm going to wrap up the podcast. You've been listening to the We the People Convention weekly news and opinion podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless the United States of America. We'll see you next week. Bye now.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we intertwined.